How you doing, everybody? Brian Senior, Political Truths, 832. There's a lot going on right now with the Ukraine stuff, and there's a lot of people asking the question, why isn't America doing more to help the Ukrainian people? And there's a lot of pundits that are coming up with these really complicated, long-winded things about it, about why that's happening or not happening, why they're not taking the steps needed to protect the Ukrainian people and just let Vladimir Putin just walk through with his stormtroopers like it's no big deal. I'm telling you right now, the Biden administration holds a grudge against the Ukrainian government and, in particular, President Zelensky. Now, if you remember, there was a guy back in 2014 or so. His name was Shokin. He worked for the Prosecutor General's office in Ukraine, and he was investigating a company called Burisma Holding Limited and the board of directors, which included Hunter Biden. He was actually investigating the Minister of Ecology of Ukraine, Mykola Zolchevsky, I think is how you pronounce it. But he was investigating the shady dealings that they were doing where the government was giving sweetheart deals to the Burisma. Burisma was like just raking in the dough and just kind of wasting the people's money of Ukraine. And so Biden was a part of that, made millions of dollars. This prosecutor, Shokin, was investigating that, or preliminary investigations. And so his dad was president at the time. Hunter Biden's dad was president, Joe Biden, and he was pressuring the Ukrainian government to drop the case, to stop the investigation, because he didn't want any dirt coming out on his family. So the former president, Poroshenko, is I believe how you pronounce it, he caved into the pressure from the White House, from the Obama administration, and in particular Joe Biden. So he caved in. Now, the Ukrainian government, everybody's talking about how corrupt they are and how corrupt they were, and that's true, which is why Hunter Biden was making all that money out there, because they were in fact corrupt. So the new guy comes in, Zelensky, and he wants to clean up the politics a little bit, clean up the government, and try to be a reformer, which obviously he got a lot of pushback for that. And in the course of trying to clean up the government, he had a phone call with President Trump, and they were both talking about government corruption and how they could clean it up. And the Democrats ended up using that phone call to try to trump up charges against President Trump, saying that he was trying to abuse his power, which ironically is the very thing that Joe Biden did, abused his power to pressure the government. And in fact, Joe Biden bragged about it on camera, saying that he went in and told these government officials, either this Shokin guy is fired today or you don't get your $1 billion in aid that the government of the United States is going to give to you. And so sure enough, the dude was fired. So Joe Biden used his political influence to take out a prosecutor that was investigating his son's company in the Ukraine. So that's where the whole genesis of this impeachment came from, with this phone call. So this right now is Joe Biden. The reason why he's stepping aside and letting Putin do his thing with very minimal pushback, a couple of weak sanctions that aren't going to do anything to stop the Russians from going into Ukraine. Obviously, they haven't stopped. This is all a grudge by Joe Biden. He's not going to help the Ukraine because they refused to cave in to the Democrats' wishes. This Zelensky guy did not go along with the program to say a bunch of bad stuff about President Trump to help the impeachment. So now Biden is holding that grudge, and he's not going to do a damn thing to help the Ukrainian people. He wants Zelensky out. He wants him gone. He wants all the evidence of whatever his son did in Ukraine to be gone. So that's what's going on. Everybody's coming up with these long-winded ideas of why the United States isn't jumping in the middle, which, by the way, in case you don't know, it was the United States who encouraged the Ukraine to get rid of their nuclear weapons way back when. At one point in history, it was the United States and Russia were the #1 holders of nuclear weapon producers, and they had the biggest stockpiles of nuclear weapons. And #3 on the planet was the Ukraine. So the Ukraine had all kinds of power, they had all kinds of leverage when they had nuclear weapons. They could get their way. The United States helped to talk them out of their nuclear arsenal and give it up to the Russians. In return, the United States was going to provide security for the Ukraine. And now the Ukraine neither has weapons or security. And Joe Biden is doing nothing but sitting on his hands and giving speeches and these meaningless little sanctions or whatever he's doing, and it's not gonna work. It's not intended to work. He is holding a grudge against the Ukraine and President Zelensky in particular. And the sad part is President Zelensky is probably going to be dead in a week. And that is because he did not go along with the program to destroy President Trump. And yes, there's a lot of other backstories and a lot of other backdrops and a long, decades long history between the Ukraine and Russia. But the point is, the United States is doing zilch to help the Ukraine after they promised to provide security for the Ukraine after they talked the Ukraine out of their nuclear weapons. So it's really not much more complicated than that. Biden's holding a grudge. He's going to let all of these people, I don't know if you guys saw the video of the little kid that got hit by a rocket. So now little kids in Ukraine are eating missiles because Joe Biden wants to hold a grudge against the Ukraine. It's just that simple. There's nothing more to it than that. And I've heard, my wife just read a thing tonight about Taiwan, that the Chinese are flying planes over Taiwan now because when there's no leadership, when you have a weak Western culture, the tyrants will take advantage of that. And China is already seeing blood in the water. It's a feeding frenzy for these dictatorships, for these communist regimes that just have no regard for anything other than imperialism, imperialistic ideals and goals. And it's ironic that all the people that don't like the United States say that we are imperialistic, we go and force our will on the whole world, and yet here we have Russia and China about to do those very things in real time, right in everyone's face, and nobody is even blinking an eye over it. Everybody's scared to death. Nobody's going to do anything to protect Taiwan or Ukraine, and who knows where Putin's going to go after Ukraine, because he knows there's no leadership on the world stage today. There's nobody that's going to stand up to him. Everybody is weak-kneed. We've got a bunch of Western leaders, woke leaders, who are more interested in equity than human life. Brian Senior, Political Truths, 832. I'm out.